Hi, this is Dale Rhoda. In this short video, we're going to go through a simple example of data cleaning. Consider this very simple data set. There are 10 lines. It represents 10 boys. So it has information about the stratum, the cluster, the interviewer ID, the interview date, the household ID, respondent ID, the boy's name, and whether they were vaccinated using a yes or no response. So here's an example of a clean data set. In our workflow for data cleaning, the first thing we do is write down our list of expectations for the variables. And so these would be my expectations for a simple data set like this. First, the ID variables are stratum, cluster, household ID, and respondent ID. And I would expect that no variable should be missing. In fact, no variable, not just the ID variables, but none of the variables should be missing for any of these respondents. That respondent ID would not be duplicated. That's a unique variable in the whole data set. And that the combination of 4 ID variables, stratum, cluster, household, and respondent, that those would not be duplicated. And I also expect that the variable VXD holds only values of yes or no. So we're going to have a look and look at how we would find those exceptions. Now, imagine that the data set didn't come clean, but in fact it was dirty in these ways. Cluster ID is missing in one row, as is the household ID. The respondent ID here is repeated. It should be a 9, but it was typed as an 8 here. And in this, in row 6, the boy's name was mistyped. Instead of being typed in the name field, it was typed over in the VX field. So the name is over here, and we're missing the VXD outcome. This is a syntax that I would use, Stata syntax that I would use to list the problems, to find the problems in a data set like this. First, we would load up the data set. That's the use line. Then we would have a line to check for missing values for each one of the variables. So that's what this syntax does here. If the variable is missing, then it lists the line number, so we can address that. And then we're listing the line number and the value of VXD if the value is not either yes or no. And then we're checking for duplicates either in the respondent ID or in the combination of 4 ID variables. So this is a short Stata program that would check the list of expectations found here. And we would find some exceptions. So we might make a little spreadsheet here where we can begin to document the exceptions and where we have room to enter a corrected value when we look it up, maybe based on the paper form. So this is the value of line. So the first problem occurs on line 8, and that is that the cluster is missing, but we know it shouldn't be missing, so we're going to fill it in once we go and look at the paper form perhaps. On line 8, the household ID is also missing. The name is missing on line 6. The variable VXD takes on a value that's not appropriate on line 6. And on line 9, the respondent ID is probably wrong. So here's a spreadsheet that makes a list of things. We might now send the data manager back to pull the paper forms for these respondents and fill in the corrected values. Once we've filled in the corrected values in the yellow cells here, we can write some Stata syntax. In fact, we can even have Excel write the Stata syntax to amend the data set with the corrected values. So we can see here that we want to replace the value of cluster with 2 in line number 8. This is a valid sort of Stata syntax over here in column E. And I've used Excel to help write the Stata syntax. So now I can copy this syntax into a program in order to clean the data set. We see the example of that here. I load up the dirty data set, and then here are the 5 lines of Stata syntax that will help me clean it. So I'm replacing, for the ID variables here, I'm replacing the values and cleaning up the ID variables first. That's my personal practice. And then there are 2 lines here to clean up the other variables. We're gonna put Ethan's name in line 6 over in the name column instead of the VXD column. And when we looked on the paper form, we found that in fact Ethan was vaccinated. So we're going to replace the value of VXD with yes in line 6. And then we would save this data set with a different name. We wouldn't overwrite the original data set. We would save it with a different name. And then both this program and the 2 data sets together help us document later when we're documenting what we did in data cleaning. we have a record of precisely what we did, what changes we made. In the first homework assignment in this track, you need to follow a process that's like the one I've demonstrated here. You're going to need to identify rows in the data set that don't meet your expectations and pull them out into a list and propose a procedure for fixing the data, for cleaning the data. After you've finished the homework and we've discussed it, I'll share a new Stata command that we've written here that combines these steps, that works within the workflow I've described here, where you specify the expectation and the Stata command writes an Excel spreadsheet. It lists all the exceptions. It provides a space for corrected values. Once you type in the corrected value, it writes the appropriate Stata syntax to fix the data. So you can copy that syntax out of Excel, paste it into a Stata program, and by golly, your data set will be cleaner than it was before. We'll look forward to sharing that with you and getting your feedback on it. If you have any questions, let us know. We'll look forward to engaging with you on this topic. Thanks very much.